Howdy, Faisal. How are you?
Howdy.
Faisal, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. You head a Swiss pharmaceutical company, which is a big deal. And you guys have been recognized as one of the fastest 1,000 growth companies in Europe a few years back, which is an amazing achievement. And you've been with the company a decade, and you're based in Geneva, Switzerland. And before that, you spent most of your 20s in the US.
10 years in the US, 10 years in Geneva.
And you miss Jordan?
Wallahi, Miss Jordan, yeah.
Well, today we're going to focus on Switzerland because not that much about Switzerland in the news as much as China, Sweden, UK, US. What do you make of the Swiss response and the Swiss medical data that's coming out with regards to COVID-19?
Thanks, Ahmad. It's nice to talk to you. Switzerland initially was a bit late as in closing the borders. Things were boiling in Italy. I would say end of February, early March. It was quite obvious that Italy was in bad shape, but the rest of Europe were just looking at Italy as if it's an island and nothing's going to happen to them. I think they were all in denial, maybe in shock. If they knew what to do, which is closing the border, I think they were all afraid to do that because it was a matter of who's going to be the first to do that and take the risk of making the wrong decision, because closing a border is a big deal. And if you
Yeah.
remember, Austria was the first, and the European Union was pissed off at Austria for doing that. And look at Austria now, they opened. So I think initially it was slow, the response in Switzerland. And remember, Switzerland is very decentralized, meaning that the federal government does not really decide everything, it's the cantons that decide. So that decentralization, I think, was a problem because Switzerland is not used to deal with emergencies and warlike times and, going to a central decision making.
Is there a federal government like the American federal government?
There's a federal council of 7 ministers, and those are the seven that essentially rule the country at the federal level. Each council member owns 2 or 3 or 4 ministries. So you can have like healthcare and economy, you can have interior affairs and defense.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in Jordan, you have 30, right? Or something like
We have like
so here you have
two to
7.
three dozen.
So here we have 7. So from those 7, one of them is the president every year. So they rotate. So we have every year a president changes here in Switzerland. This decentralization and lack of power at the top caused the delay of making a decision fast. So finally, the decision came mid-March, and the decision came, and I think the leader that stood up first in Europe was the president of France. In Western Europe, he was the first to impose a quarantine and a complete shutdown and to close the borders, and he pushed the European Union to put a date to close the EU completely. So that was mid-March, but it was 2 weeks too late.
Yeah, those 2 weeks were so critical for spread, especially when you border a country like Italy, especially northern Italy, which was a big hub for Corona.
It hit Ticino, which is the Swiss-Italian part, which is half an hour from Milano. That was the first part that was hit hard. And actually, the canton of Geneva, where I live, the first case came from Milano. And then they started tracing them, like you do in Jordan. Everyone's excited. Yeah, they traced one person, then they call the other, and then it started getting hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands, and then there's no more tracing. So that was the first week, I would say, after the shutdown.
Do you observe any kind of tracing mechanism that's publicly announced, like the Korean model, where they've shown us in many videos how when somebody tests positive for the virus, they use even Google Maps to figure out where he's been, and then they visit those locations. Has that been something that the Swiss government has been doing? Or?
So let me just take you a step back. So there's an interesting culture thing that happened in this quarantine and shutdown that I realized. You look at Italy, Spain, and France. They did a hard lockdown like you guys have in Jordan. So that was their model. You need a permit to go out. You're not allowed to go out until today, 7, 8 weeks on, France and Spain. You only go out to buy food and you need to apply online. Switzerland, Austria, and Germany did what I call the democratic lockdown, where they told people, hey, we ask you to stay home, but we're not going to police you. And amazingly, in those countries, the curve started to flatten 3 weeks later without a hard lockdown. Why? Because the culture of the people in Switzerland, Austria, and Germany is to respect the government, follow the rules of the government and collectively do what's best for the countries. Whereas in Italy and Spain, people like to go out. The culture is to enjoy. Even early March, there was Italian politicians. You will find the video like saying, what is this bullshit? We're gonna go out, have wine," and they were like cheering and drinking out in public, and that would never happen here. So we followed that model. We were allowed to go to the parks, but I mean, there's nothing to do. But you can go to the park, you can drive your car.
Did they continue allowing delivery kitchens to operate food delivery?
Oh yeah, yeah, that never stopped.
Yeah. This is what
So
something that's in Jordan has been quite harsh. Even a small pizza oven kitchen hasn't opened in 6 weeks, which is
uh,
unbelievable.
don't know what's the reasoning.
From my point of view, to go back to your point of cultural behavior and how people look at their government directives and how they deal with their daily lives in terms of going out and just having their liberty. In Jordan, even with the hard lockdown, in many neighborhoods in the capital, Amman, we hear and see videos and reports of kids in the streets in the hundreds in each neighborhood playing with every kid in the neighborhood,
Mhm.
no social distancing on the street.
It's a culture thing.
It's a cultural thing, but also it doesn't happen in posh neighborhoods where houses are bigger and people have gardens. So it's also a poverty issue. And also, like you said, sometimes when it doesn't hit you directly, it's hard to make it
Mhm.
real. I mean, we're all guilty of, especially in early March, of thinking, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to hit here. I mean, China was in deep trouble in February and the world was still open. Flights were coming in
Yeah,
and
but
out.
China had a lot of data, and I think half of what they said is fake. So, if
Yeah,
the world
it's
really
true.
knew what was happening in China in early January or late December, which I'm sure
Yeah.
is
I
hundreds
mean,
of
you're
thousands
right.
of cases.
They reneged on their World Health Organization duty to inform. They did fail in that sense. And as you know, there's been a lot of talk of them being sued, which is never going to materialize. It's just a political kind of
Okay.
statement.
So going back to your point, for
Restaurant. You're
the
talking about how culturally in Switzerland is you can go out to the park.
so they set the
Yeah.
group of five. They said if you're not allowed to have more than five people together, okay,
Yeah.
which means a family essentially.
Yeah.
And people respected that. You asked about tracing. So what Switzerland did the first weekend, they asked the mobile operator in Switzerland called Swisscom, and they said, "Hey, give us the data if there's a grouping of more than 20 people across Switzerland. We want to know,
Mm.
not who, where."
Where? Yeah.
Because of privacy, they can apparently. So that was on the news. So apparently, the Swisscom came back said actually across all of Switzerland, there's not a single group of 20 people together based on the mobile data.
Wow.
So then the government knew, okay, so our theory worked. People respect the government, and it's not our culture to lock down people. That's what the president said in her speech. We don't lock you down. You follow what we tell you, and that's it. So
It's viable to do that. I mean, Google Maps does it to tell you where there's traffic ahead. They collect how many cell phones are close to each other
yeah,
in a street. So that's legal, apparently.
yeah, you're right. So the tracing. So I was reading today. They're doing a lot of at EPFL, very advanced technology university in Lausanne. They are already developing this application and testing it to trace if you are near someone sick. This application will let you know, be careful at this point, at this time, you were near someone sick. So you have to go home or quarantine or
Wow.
test or whatever. So
Okay.
they're testing that. But what the government said that they would like to roll out such a thing. I think it's coming in May, but only if you accept as a citizen. So it's going to be optional. And they said if more than 60, I think, or 70% of the people download it and follow this application, it would be effective.
That's
So it's
interesting.
coming.
Do you feel that the mood of Swiss people is now shifting, like some polls in the US have been saying this week, shifting from being very pro lockdown versus opening up to now slowly realizing that the economic catastrophe is actually now becoming something more worrisome than getting corona?
So Switzerland is a very rich country. The Swiss Central Bank had excess reserves of more than 400 billion 2 years ago. And then it came out the results this week. They closed last year, I think, with excess reserves of 800 billion
Yeah.
foreign currency. And the currency is now the strongest in the world. The crisis happened. The government came out with initiatives extremely fast within the first week. And it was in the Financial Times, actually, how effective and fast it was. For example, they offered companies 10% of your revenue as interest-free loan from the government, okay,
Hmm.
with zero interest, with 5 years payback.
Wow, that's
So in
amazing.
our case, in our company, we applied. I signed the papers on Sunday night. You had to fill a very simple form. The way they secured themselves is they said you go through your commercial bank. So the bank has the responsibility to verify what you said is right. So you submit it to the bank, and the bank submits it to the government. So we
Mhm.
submitted that on a Sunday. The money was in our bank account on Tuesday.
That's incredible.
48 hours. And
Mhm.
it was in the Financial Times that some companies got the money the same day. So
Damn.
they went out, they gave liquidity immediately to all companies, whether you need it or not, up to a size. So I
Wow.
think the size was 500 million revenue, I think. It was the second week of the lockdown. So
So end of March.
it was end of March, yeah.
Okay, let me tell you the Jordanian story. That's very similar in some ways. We applied for a loan that is almost 10% of our
Okay.
annual sales. It's a 2% loan payable in 2 years with a 6 month grace period. For Jordan, it's not bad. And it's
Mm.
exactly the mechanism was we apply through our own bank that already knows us.
Yeah.
We applied 10 days ago and we talked to the guys there. They don't know how long it's going to take. But this happened in week 5. The downside of being this late is that so many companies not only are they bankrupt and they can't pay any of their vendors, but the employees are screwed because
You
they're
don't get
not getting
salary.
properly paid. And our social security corporation in Jordan took 30 days after the lockdown to announce their plan to
Mm,
compensate 30% of the person's salary who was totally
mm,
out of work. We have pivoted 5 times in terms of cash flow in our retail business just to stay alive. It's been extremely stressful, obviously. It's not a unique position to be in. And even companies that are selling like crazy, they have to be very careful of the drop that's going to come with the contraction. Yeah, I mean, Switzerland is 8.5 million people, very close to
So,
Jordan,
so if you think about it, so the total package, the first package was 40 billion. So it's 5% of their
of
excess
their
reserves.
excess. Yeah, it's nothing.
So they secured the companies immediately. Of course, unemployment benefits went into effect. They called it chômage
Mm,
partiel, partial unemployment. So
mm.
we even applied for our salespeople for partial unemployment because
Yeah,
they cannot visit doctors. And then they even gave money for women that have to work at home that need support for help. They give you like 100 francs a day. They did a lot of things. Within 1 week, it was all in place and you got the
yeah.
money. And remember, in Switzerland, everyone files taxes. It's a well managed tax system. I always say I'm proud to pay taxes in Switzerland because I see the result in the parks and the education and the streets and the police and the government. What you pay, you get back. With all the support of the government financially, and they allow you to go out, no one stops you. So the Swiss were not damaged as much as a population as Italians or Spanish.
They were so swift, they didn't hesitate to just pump liquidity into the market
This is the only way to, like you said, in
to
Jordan,
minimize
if
damage.
damage to the companies going bankrupt, going out of cash, and people are getting paid.
It makes so much sense to give people money, literally give people cash, especially in the Swiss model where the cash is sitting there. When you give Swiss people partial salaries, that money is going back into the economy.
Well,
They're not going to
for
go
food,
to,
going back for food and
yeah,
rent.
yeah, it's going to be spent back into the economy. They're not going to Monte Carlo to buy a yacht. And the same thing with Jordan. Every penny
Stay,
of
yeah.
assistance is going to stay in the market. It's just exchanging hands. Jordan's big hole, though, the big black hole in Jordan, is the 4 billion JDs, $5 billion of tourism money that just
That's not coming.
disappeared. A lot of
Well,
it is
Spain is. I was reading today, 120 billion of lost tourism.
the government is no longer collecting taxes the next 2 months. The government is no longer fining
Yeah,
you for speeding tickets. There's no speeding tickets.
there was no one
So there's
driving
no one
cars.
driving. So that was a couple of $1 million
ah,
a week.
Switzerland, of course, delayed all taxes, also security.
Yeah.
They allow you to postpone payments to the bank as a company till 2021,
Wow.
and they allowed us to not pay suppliers until early April. So they gave us a 4 week grace. All
Hmm.
companies.
What about rent?
No, nothing on rent. And actually, it was discussed because they said you have money, you're getting paid.
Yeah, yeah. So
No
just pay your
one
rent.
not getting
Yeah.
paid. Yeah, exactly. Next week they're gonna announce incentives for people to buy bicycles. In the past they used to give you back 400 francs if you buy a bicycle, or you buy electric bike, you get part of the money back. They're
Yeah.
gonna roll that out apparently next week because they want people now to use bicycles a lot more. A big part of transmission is happening inside public transport Public transport is huge. People love taking the bus and
Yeah.
trams. Beautiful, actually, clean and on time. So they are trying to incentivize people to buy more bicycles.
Is that something feasible inside a city like Geneva? Is it flat?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of bike lanes. I have an electrical bicycle that I bought luckily last year, and I've been using it nonstop. All over Europe, you're seeing more bike lane popping up, even in London. So the mood here is fine, but Swiss people like to work. There was a voting 3 years ago to add a week of vacation, and they did a vote because every 2 months we have a vote in Switzerland, and
Hmm.
people voted no. We don't want a additional week of vacation. Very hardworking, loyal people, so they want to go back to work. We are reopening in Switzerland as of next week, so after 7 weeks, but a very slow process. So it's a three-phase process. But what's really opening next week? It's preschool, hairdressers, hardware store, or dentists are opening. Okay, doctors are opening, and hospitals are going back to normal surgeries. And then the next phase is May 11th, so 2 weeks later, which means 9 weeks after the shutdown. And that's when they're planning to roll out primary schools, malls, bigger shops. And then the third date, which was set for June 8th, they said they will, based on the data, of course, each opening is based on what happens during those 2, 3 weeks. June 8th, they said they will open secondary schools, universities, museums, zoos, libraries. So everything basically will open except gyms, restaurants, coffee shops, large gatherings, no plan to open. And the funny part is no one is talking about borders. So borders are closed. It's not even a discussion in the government. So Geneva Airport, we had hundreds of flights a day. Now we have three a day: Frankfurt, London, Rome.
A lot of
Apparently, they
flights, huh?
told me when you go to board that you need to be a citizen of that country where you're going, or you need
Ah,
to have a work permit to be going to
okay.
Italy because the border is closed. Even in Switzerland, you cannot come in unless you have a residency as a
Wow.
European.
Wow.
All of
Wow.
Europe is like that, not only Switzerland. You cannot go
Wow.
places. So how are they gonna reopen that? That's what I keep asking myself because that so now Switzerland's controlled. The growth rate in Switzerland of new cases is, or the R factor is less than one, which means that one sick person is only infecting maximum one person. Before it was
Okay.
40 or 50, the R factor at the peak. So now it's under control. So we're at today, all of Switzerland, 200 cases. At peak, we were at 1,500 a day. So now it's 200 across the country.
And how many recoveries a day?
Recovery data is difficult because they don't log everyone. What you should look at is the hospitalization rate and death rates. So
Hmm.
hospitalization is on the way down as well. ICU is way down, almost one third of the peak, the ICU. And so the trend is done. So basically, the country controlled it.
You're talking about the data, that it's winding down. The peak is behind you guys. The same thing with Jordan. Actually, most countries, I believe the peak is behind us now. I'm always really excited to compare Sweden's data with European countries' data because it's such a controversial decision. So, what do you think of that?
A population of Sweden, I think, is about 10 million, 10 point something, and Switzerland is about 8.5. And you can consider the cultures is the same. And I realized that, okay, the Sweden, they have 2,000 deaths. Switzerland has 1,500. They have, I think, 15 or 16,000 cases of what they tested, obviously, but you don't test everyone. Switzerland has 28, but they say it's even much higher. We closed 7 weeks and they didn't close, and we're almost at the same level. So what was the point? Even the hospitals in Sweden are telling people, hey, if you're sick, please come because we have a lot of capacity.
Something that skewed the data against them was a couple of homes for the elderly. There was some mismanagement with a few old people's homes that,
Yeah, which is
that
the case in all of Europe, including Switzerland.
yeah. The first outbreak in the US was in elderly homes in the state of
Yes.
Washington, big time.
Yeah, I remember in
And it
Seattle.
just
Yeah.
basically wiped out dozens of people within a few days. So the Swedish model, yeah, the numbers look good, man.
Listen, I think the culture factor that we discussed earlier is a huge factor because look at Italy and Spain. They are similar in terms of love. They love to go out, and there's a lot of crowding in Spain, Italy. A lot. Just restaurants are small, and bars, and people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
drinking, and festivals. But then again, remember also what benefits Sweden is they looked at what happened in Europe. It was a wave going through Europe, and people knew that shit, hey, this is no joke. So we do social distancing and hygiene and blah blah blah.
But since you mentioned the cultural part, one thing that a lot of pro Sweden articles that are praising the lockdown, they never mention why Finland and Norway the only neighbors of Sweden. They're not following in Sweden's footsteps and just reopening after seeing the success or the lack of catastrophe that Sweden has experienced. And Finland and Norway are very
Not
wealthy
very rich.
countries. One reason might be because they can afford to stay locked down. Another reason could be the political will. They don't have the political will to make such a big decision.
That's important because the government in Switzerland started getting under pressure from the right wing. And the interesting part is that Switzerland is a three-part country. You have the German part, Zurich, French part, Geneva, Lausanne, and the Italian part.
Yeah.
And the hardest hit area was the Italian part and the French part. So Geneva is the number one canton actually with the most cases per 100,000 population. So the German part of Switzerland is saying we don't have a lot of cases, but our businesses are stopped and we need to get on with our life. And the French part saying no, but we are screwed. We cannot open and we cannot get on with our life. And the whole country has to be on a one opening or closing. You cannot open different.
I
There's no
disagree that
borders.
the whole country has to be in one unison,
Cannot, man.
one
But
lockstep.
you
You
have
can.
people flowing. There's people
No.
flowing up.
Don't let them flow into each other. For example, in Jordan,
Cannot.
last week, the city of Aqaba, the only port city in Jordan, was allowed to drive without permits, but you're not allowed to leave the government. That was a very smart decision.
But here you cannot do it because you have highways,
True.
you have trains.
The roads to Aqaba are two roads.
Exactly.
They funnel into one checkpoint, which is
Exactly.
the customs
And then
checkpoint.
what you could risk happening is that if you open up, for example, Zurich, people start going shopping in Zurich and coming back to the canton, and then they will just take the whole wave. That's what happened in Italy when they locked down the north. Everyone went south.
But you know what you can do? You can at least allow inner Zurich places to open. Can you drive to Zurich today legally, Faisal?
Of course, yeah, of course.
You can drive to Zurich legally. You can drive everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
So would you go to Zurich to enjoy a Starbucks coffee because you miss it so much? If it opened next week, you would drive to Zurich for a cup of coffee.
I know I wouldn't go to Zurich because it's 3 hours away. But if it was 20,
so it's not going to be that big a deal. Maybe if Zurich opened cafes before Geneva.
Yeah, but I think it's a complicated political problem. Then it's not that simple. Yeah,
there's a lot of feeling of anxiety in Jordan over which sectors are going to open first and how is this fair and who got the permit and this guy didn't get the permit.
Yeah, but you know what, man? To be honest, the complete and utter failure that happened in Switzerland is the delivery. There's two big chains in Switzerland for supermarkets, cooperatives, so they're owned by the people. It's called Migros and Co-op. And in the past, you could order next day delivery because the culture here is to go shop on your own.
Yeah.
And once the corona hit, the whole thing crashed. You cannot order. When you go to order, you pick your basket. You spend like half an hour picking the food, and then there's no delivery. So you just wasted your time fucking online. I ordered electronics 4 weeks ago. I still didn't get it from the biggest electronics store in Switzerland. Damn. I didn't get it. I ordered something from the pharmacy because I started to say, hey, I want to move more online. And shit is not coming, man. So I'm back to physical shopping.
Yeah, listen, this is the case in so many places. I mean, culturally, people are willing to buy online, but it's not catching up yet. But it will catch up. What do you think is the most retarded conspiracy theory out there about Corona? Is it the 5G?
But what I think for sure that I would not forgive is that they hid it for a long time, the Chinese government. And WHO helped them or didn't help them, I don't know. But definitely WHO failed. And the head of WHO, in my opinion, should be held accountable because he's the leader. And so they hid it for weeks and they tried to hid it maybe because to save their economy and their image and all that. And apparently it maybe could have started even as early as November or October, apparently.
Were you convinced that the US had done the virus when it was China and Iran at the top of the list?
Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh, of course, China and Iran. Trump was always...
But I thought that was interesting how Iran was the second country that was hit the most after China.
I know, but once Italy got up there, then that theory died. When Bush won the second term because of 9/11. It was 2 years after 9/11. He started campaigning. He was a wartime president. Yeah, this is war. This is like war for me. And guess what?
It's not a war, man. Unless he plans to bomb China, it's not a war.
No, it's not about defending with troops. It's about people are afraid. Fear. They don't want change during fear. You think that Americans are happy with the lockdown for what they were okay with it in March. In April, man, the pendulum swing. They are fucking hating this lockdown, and he's gonna ride that wave. He's gonna say, "I told you, I told you. Look at my tweets. I said, yalla, liberate Michigan, liberate Wisconsin, liberate Minnesota, whatever." And he's gonna ride any happy story. He's gonna ride it. He's gonna say, "I gave you those checks, that free money.
He put his
I
name on it apparently on
Yeah,
his
yeah, he
picture.
did. He signed his name on it. I'm the one who's gonna fuck China for you. Like you know how he did with Mexico. He's like Mexico's gonna pay for that wall. Bullshit
They
story for his
they're already
campaign.
saying that China is gonna pay for this.
That's what people love, man. That's why I think he's gonna win. There's two ways Democrats can win, in my opinion.
Yeah,
One, if they do mail-in voting, because America they don't take a day off when they vote. It's on a
yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah, yeah.
It's the first Tuesday of November. Poor people don't go out to vote because they have fucking jobs and debt to pay off.
Yeah.
Poor people mostly vote Democrat in bigger numbers. So his pro-business, let's open up,
Yeah.
is so that nobody will ever whisper the idea of mail voting. He wants people to go out to vote. The second way that Biden might win is if he picks a VP
Yeah.
like The Rock, Dwayne
Yeah,
Johnson,
I
or
thought,
some.
could he pick the governor of New York?
Cuomo is very popular now for people who don't really know deep politics. They watch CNN because they don't know how to look for better news online. They watch MSNBC, they watch Fox, and they see this guy who's out there bitching at Trump. He seems like he's got his shit together, Cuomo. He might win with Cuomo, but Democrats aren't very good politicians. They think that he needs to pick a woman to win the American vote, man. Doesn't matter. Americans don't give a shit.
And there's no leader, not even in Europe. Well, President of France has stood up well. I think I like what he's doing. So
The
who's more
gap,
powerful, Chinese army or the American army?
no question, the American army is more powerful and it's more
But they have
available all over the
nuclear
world.
weapons in China, no?
Oh, yeah, so do dozens of countries, man. European countries have nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons, but the Chinese can cripple America using nefarious tools. But then again, any country can do that. Iran can do that. If China really did this virus, they could have dropped it in New York City months before
But maybe not
America.
for
It would have
America.
been
Maybe
different.
it was the strategy of China to take over the world. They thought they'll weaken the world financially, mentally, health-wise, everything,
Yeah,
and step in. Because at the middle of the crisis, who was sending planes to Italy? It was on the news. I was watching it
China.
every day. Of course, China, not
Yeah.
Germany, not Switzerland, not France.
Look,
China was sending goods and doctors and
yeah,
nurses to
yeah,
Italy.
yeah, yeah. China's policy of getting their foot in the door of many countries' infrastructures is huge. In
Yeah,
Africa, I
yeah.
mean,
Here in Switzerland, we have very good relationship with China. No problem.
most countries have a good relationship with China. China
Yeah,
doesn't have many enemies, to be honest, except for
yeah.
Taiwan. And China produces most of the world's shit, and it's not in their interest to weaken their
Yeah.
buyers. So China needs America to be buying their shit more than before, to be honest.
Mm.
And this virus is not helping China that much. I'm a very skeptical person. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I would rather believe this virus was an accident and that nobody's benefiting from it, to be honest with you. There will be
Yeah.
some companies that make a shitload of money, like the hand sanitizer companies. Great, congratulations. You guys are selling. I mean, what's your
Meds.
biggest jumping product right now? Like highest
Or the
grossing product?
hospital products, of course.
General hospital products.
Antibiotics, because what's happening is
Yeah.
these patients, when they get very sick, they get pneumonia, so they need antibiotics.
But did other drugs drop because there's no elective procedures and all that stuff, or not really?
Yeah, so you're right. So other non-acute drugs dropped, of course. So the ones that you get from the pharmacy, muscle and pain, or some vitamins, or
Because people are
first you
sitting
can
at
go.
home.
You need a doctor to prescribe it
Oh
first.
yeah,
There's no doctor to prescribe, and so people are taking only their high blood pressure, diabetes medicine,
yeah,
cardiovascular, the critical stuff to stay alive, and that's it.
yeah. So even drug companies aren't really gonna.
So it's a balance. Yeah,
Yeah,
one
they're
thing is
not
up,
gonna
one
make a
thing is down.
killing. Yeah. The only companies that are making a big killing that don't have a downside, I think, is companies like Zoom, which we're using on this call.
It's,
Zoom has no downside right now. It's not like a supermarket where they had the boom in March,
yeah,
crazy in
yeah, and
March.
now it's down
Now
because
they're
you can't
fucked
eat.
because people aren't getting paid Aslan to buy as much food.
Funny, I go to the store now. Everything is on sale because it's gonna be expired.
Movie theaters, gyms, hairdressers, everybody's fucked.
Airlines, hotels,
Ooh, some industries are gonna disappear or be nationalized. I don't. If the
airlines.
Switzerland's airline, Swiss Air, is it?
Swiss Air is owned by Lufthansa, and Lufthansa announced today that they only have a few weeks of cash left.
Should the government bail them out, or should the
So
government tell
this
them, here's a couple of $1 billion, but now we own most of you?
that's what's gonna happen.
It's going to be nationalized. Airlines cannot make money in the next couple of years. They're not a for profit business anymore. I think they should just either sell your stake to the government or whoever is going to put money in your failing business,
But what do
or
you do with
close down.
airlines? What do you do with go under?
Some airlines should go under, yeah. Or
But
become
man, the whole
national. No, no,
country
become
needs
no, no, become
Germany
national.
needs Lufthansa to connect
Of
it to the
course.
world.
No, no,
How
you're
do you
going to become a national carrier. It's over. Who needs? I mean, how much innovation? How much more innovation do you need in airlines?
much?
Royal Jordanian's fleet of airplanes was bought mostly in the 80s, man. Still running right now,
Yeah,
most of it. And it's still running.
of
Who
course,
cares?
takes you from A to
Yeah,
B
yeah. You just want a brand
safely.
new. If you have Netflix in front of you and a good sandwich, that's all you fucking need to fly, man. Honestly,
And a
you
good
know,
seat.
and a decent
Right.
seat. You can have a decent seat that's 30 years old. Doesn't have to be brand new. So the whole industry is fucked. How
Listen,
many?
listen. I think if they do, okay, so when the vaccine comes, you need extremely rapid testing at airports.
Yeah,
Like by the time he stamps your passport, the thing is on your nose and the result is out.
yeah. Until that happens, forget it, man. Even schools. Will you send your kid to school to get
Oh
the
yeah.
virus? But what
No,
about the
no, we're
new
sending our
report?
kids to school
You're gonna send them. Are
because
you
I
worried?
trust my government who looked into this very seriously with scientists and doctors and decided
Okay.
that there's no risk of children. But they did say if the children are in close contact with pre-existing conditions, so if you have something very serious, health disease, or elderly people, then most likely your child should not come to school.
Yeah.
But that's a minority. You cannot say the whole school closes because the minority
That's
might be
true.
at risk.
That's true. That makes sense. Are you afraid that the lung damage for people who even had a mild case? Do you feel that's a true thing? I mean, today is April 24th. We were hearing this kind of scary news about lung damage. You and your wife had symptoms recently and you never got checked and you had difficulty breathing,
No,
you told me.
we didn't have flu symptoms. We had chest pain, but no other symptoms. But half of the people have no symptoms. Listen, I think like we had a webinar with a doctor last week here in Geneva Hospital, and he said, "What I tell you today will be wrong tomorrow because this is changing every single day." And he did say that they're seeing. He's saying a lot of crazy things that they've never seen before. We'll have answers, but they might be different in a month or in a week. But from what I know for sure, is most of the people who I know who got sick, including our neighbor next door, were like bed dead for 21 days. Bed dead. And they are so sick, they go to the hospital even, and the ambulance picks them up because no one will drive you to the hospital. The hospital says, okay, you are very sick, but you are not the priority to enter the hospital because your breathing is okay, so you go back home.
Wow. These are people in your building, huh?
My neighbor was like that, and a good friend of ours, his wife.
Hmm.
What comforts me is, as I told you in our group, South Korea and Austria. Always look at those two. We should all learn from those two. So, what are
Mm.
they doing? Austria is making everyone wear a mask. It's obligatory. And so is South Korea. Countries should follow that. The problem is there's no masks. So, Switzerland's buying mask machines. The government is buying mask machines, actually, and they're going to produce in country.
Interesting
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. By the way, was this the Ministry of Health here? Basically, they said, look, we're going to open up slowly, and the elderly and the pre-existing conditions, you gotta probably stay home or stay away from until there's a vaccine. And everyone else, you will go out, and most likely at some point you're gonna get sick, and eventually most of us will get sick.
You have to get your body fit.
Vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and do some lung exercises. If you can swim in your bathtub, for example, go ahead and swim in your bathtub. I go for a run every day when I can.
Gyms. I don't know, dude. A lot of them are offering free classes online, but that's a bullshit industry. I was part of a yoga class before the lockdown, and the yoga class switched to online. But I'm like, dude, it's low quality video. You know how many high quality yoga videos there are on YouTube? Millions. They're all for free.
Free,
So
yeah.
I'm sorry. How are you gonna make money?
So you gotta get
Yeah,
ready to fight Corona, bro.
I've been biking every day. My butt hurts from the bike seat.
Uh, so,
I
but I think borders will not open and no one will see anyone this year.
Yeah, yeah. This summer, forget about it. You know.
No, I heard yesterday that EU is considering closure until end of December.
Wow. On the
But
road, yeah.
imagine, man, we went back to basic life. Just I was looking at my bill this month. It's the cheapest month of my 10 years in Switzerland. Cheapest month.
Well,
All we bought
you're not eating
food.
out,
All
but
we
you're
bought is
yeah.
food. Everything we cook, we eat because at some point there's a lot of shit missing in the supermarket. So we're like, fuck, I better finish the meat. I better finish the rice. We couldn't find rice, by the way, or pasta, or some kind of bread. So then you appreciated what you had. So we finished all the food. And clothes, you have everything. You don't need to buy.
Yeah, I cut my kids' hair, all three of them, a few weeks
Yeah,
ago.
my hair is the problem.
Can you take the hat off? Let me see. Okay, the hat keeps it stuck to your skull. That's nice.
They open on Monday.
Look, in Jordan, I was thinking to support the hairdressers that are screwed,
Yeah.
to call my guy and tell him, come over and
No,
cut my
listen,
hair.
I proposed to
I'll
my
pay him.
cousin they should wear a pharmaceutical suit.
Yeah,
The suit that
like a
we.
hazmat, right?
Yeah.
A hairdresser should wear a hazmat suit, come to your house, get paid to cut your hair in your bathroom. But like he has
By
to
the
be
way,
wearing the full hazmat suit.
when he just comes in, puts it in, and cuts your hair and leaves. Poor guys. Them and they're opening massage therapist next week. I'm thinking, what the fuck? Who's gonna go do a massage next week? You back to work.
Well, biking to work takes me only half an hour, but it is a gigantic workout. It's uphill on the way home. I get home destroyed. I'm actually very inspired to get really fit now.
But
The
maybe they want that so you
inclines.
can fight Corona.
Yeah, good for me actually. And I haven't had junk food in 7 weeks. I used to love once in a while just getting some French fries from McDonald's or
What
some
happened
shit
to
like that.
McDonald's?
There was a rumor when the government said restaurants can deliver. There was a rumor that McDonald's had a 5-day waiting period. Can you imagine a country that's hooked on junk food like Amman, like a city like Amman, telling them, okay, there's no junk food for 2 months, and then you open junk food suddenly. People have been like cooped up in their homes eating their mother's food, rice plus something every day, or a shit sandwich every day for 60 days, and then McDonald's opens up, and the Big Mac is two JDs in Jordan, man. So you can imagine the appeal of a McDonald's meal right now for Jordanians.
What about Egypt or India? What's happening there?
I would love if Egypt does a major study on who
Study.
was exposed. I say millions were exposed in Egypt. Millions just exposed.
But maybe there's something to do with genetics or the TB vaccine or something. I'm starting to think.
Honestly, I don't think it's genetics. I think it's upbringing. Look, Jordan has hundreds of thousands of Egyptian laborers, low-skilled labor,
Yes,
hundreds of
yes, yes.
thousands. They make your falafel.
Yeah,
They guard your buildings. I mean,
yeah.
they're
The
everywhere. They build
gardeners.
yeah,
Yeah.
every single building is built by mostly Egyptians in Jordan. And to be honest with you, we employ a lot of Egyptians to do a lot of heavy lifting, a lot
I
of
must say they're good people, huh?
yeah,
Good,
they're amazing
hardworking
people.
people. Yeah.
They're very hardworking people, and they don't get sick as much as Jordanians. I mean, this is anecdotal. There's no real evidence. Even in my Rainbow Street branch, we had an Egyptian guy. He used to. It would be freezing outside. He'd stay in the same shirt. He doesn't wear a jacket. He burnt his hand. He continues to work. He cuts his hand. He just puts a band-aid and goes back to work. If he gets the flu, he comes into work with the flu. They're indestructible people, man. Egyptians are amazing.
So
And I
maybe
don't
you're right.
see them in 50-degree heat in Jordan, just
Yeah.
building, pouring concrete. No Jordanian would do that, man. I'm telling you, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So, is it
Maybe they're immune.
genetics? Is it genetics, or is it because they grew
Upbringing.
up with the earth, where they grew
So
up a more
like
natural
India,
upbringing?
like India.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. How can you even test for genetic predisposition to? Are their
I
T
think
cells
they're
better?
doing some. They're checking out. They're looking into that now.
Is it your T cells that are better equipped?
They're looking with the vaccine, the TB vaccine for sure. They're running studies on it, and the genes. I think they're doing studies on it. So Lebanon. I talked to my partner today in Lebanon, and they told me this. Fine, we even go to lunches and dinners at each other's houses. Okay, restaurants are closed, no mosques, no churches, but life is semi on, and they only have 600 cases. And I'm discussing with my Saudi guy, my friend there. In March, we said, in 2-3 weeks, it'll be clear. In April, I said, in April, we'll know if it's going to be disaster like Italy. Nothing happened. And today he told me, come on, Faisal, they've been telling me since March, it's over. Nothing's going to happen. I don't think we're going to have, as the case was in Europe, something is different in the Middle East. And I said, okay, after Ramadan, then we can for sure know that the Arab world maybe has a different body than the Europeans and Americans and Asians.
I really
I mean,
don't
look
know,
at the
man.
data, man. Look at the data.
I really don't know. It's interesting though.
Something is different.
Huh?
And okay, you can hide cases, but you cannot hide deaths. Howdy, you got a howdy.
Howdy, howdy, Faisal. Thanks for coming on the
Okay,
show,
thank
my
you so
friend.
much, and I wish you all the best.
Yes, we'll talk soon, and I'll see you in a few years instead of this summer.
لما يوجع الجدار مان هاخد شوكة في شغل بانكسي حمله كله واجيب تاكسي نهائي سعيد يا فانسي